My mom was a beautician. Her salon was in our home. My dad was a truck driver. He owned his own truck. In hindsight, looked back and I was like, oh, I actually have this in my DNA. My
Yeah.
parents were both entrepreneurs.
Entrepreneurial seeds planted at a young age. They set Trevor Yager on a path to marketing for some of the biggest names in Indiana business. Eli Lilly and Company.
As type 2 diabetes progresses, your doctor may suggest that you try different treatments to help keep your sugar levels in balance.
Salesforce.
Agentforce helps retailers prevent fashion fails. It's what AI was meant to be.
And Cummins.
Cummins Electrification is giving the biggest thinkers and wildest ideas room to grow.
TrendyMinds founder and chairman Trevor Yager's journey from small-town Michigan to Anderson University and his connection to Tony Stewart, to leading the largest full-service marketing agency in Indianapolis. He's my guest this week on the Business and Beyond podcast. Hello and welcome to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. I'm Gary Dick. Well, not many entrepreneurs can say they founded their business as a student in college. Trevor Yager can. It all started during his junior year at Anderson University, a connection to a t-shirt embroidery company that eventually put him on a path to getting his big break, working with race car driver Tony Stewart. And I'm pleased to be joined by Trevor Yager, the chairman and founder of TrendyMinds, full-service marketing agency, the largest in Indianapolis, and indeed either the largest or certainly one of the largest in the state of Indiana. Trevor, always great to see you. How are you?
You as well, Gary. Thanks for having me. Doing well. Looking forward to being back in Indianapolis next week after we moved to Florida. So it's enjoying the warmth down here, but ready for the cold and the holiday cheer. So I
gotcha. The TrendyMinds expansion into Florida. We'll get into that a bit more in a little bit. But TrendyMinds, I guess I did know this, but I think it's really interesting. You founded the company. You founded TrendyMinds almost 30 years ago now, right? Next year, I think it'll be 30 years. And you founded the company when you were a student, when you were a senior at Anderson University. Tell us about how that came about.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to share my age a little bit in doing this, but I was in the 90s and I was in at Anderson University, and I have a degree in psychology with a minor of history and poli-sci. And anyone who knows those fields, that back in the 90s, there were only a few options of what you would do with those degrees. And luckily for me, I was exposed to a t-shirt embroidery company and an ad specialty company early on. And during my summer, my junior year, I learned that business and then decided, I think I can do this. And some of the social clubs on the campus of Anderson University became my first clients. They say never work with your friends. Well, I kind of ignored that and went head first into working with my friends. They were my clients. And then from there, just, started the business, was all about learning everything I could. It was a cool time in where we were with the world because this thing called the internet was new. So it wasn't even widely adopted yet. I was able to get in and start learning how to build websites early and do e-commerce. So it happened to be the right time for me in my life to start the company that is now TrendyMinds.
Did you always have that kind of that entrepreneurial mind, that entrepreneurial bent? Because not everybody has it, not everybody wants it. Not everybody embraces that. Is that something you starting a business, running a business, something you wanted to do?
It wasn't so much about the business. It was more about being scrappy and wanting to leave where I grew up. And it's not that I grew up in a bad place, but I grew up in a very small town in Michigan, 400 people in my town. It was a generational town. My mom's family had been there for years. I never really thought of myself as being from an entrepreneurial family because in my mind that meant, your parents must run on this big successful business. Yeah. But my mom was a beautician. Her salon was in our home. My dad was a truck driver. He owned his own truck. So I in hindsight, looked back and I was like, I actually have this in my DNA. My parents were both entrepreneurs. And I think I just innately took that in. I've joked many times that I grew up in a hair salon. So I learned when to speak and when to keep my mouth quiet, when to get out of there, and when it was okay to be present, which funny enough, those are all traits that you need in running a business.
What do you remember about those early days of Trendy Minds, of starting the company, of maybe the highs and the lows, those types of things as you got things rolling?
What I like to tell people is that to own a business, you know this, you're an entrepreneur as well. You have to have this weird faith. And I'm not talking about faith as far as in religion or anything there. I'm just saying a faith that things will work out. There are ebbs and flows. You will have peaks and you will have very big valleys. But I think you have to always stay on course. You have to keep moving for what you believe is right. Do the right things, even if it costs you money. Make sure that you make good decisions, and you're not going to please everybody by making good decisions. But you have to do that. So for me, I think I've always pushed myself to say, this is where we're going, and we'll see how we end up. There's many ways to get from point A to point B, but I think those are the lessons that you learn along the way, and you have to always know that you've never arrived, no matter how successful you are.
Yeah. You remember a time or a point when you kind of started to think that, hey, this thing, is getting some traction. I'm going to make this, going to make it here. Was there a point in time when that kind of clicked?
I would say there's several times, and there's also been several times where I'm like, what am I doing?
Right.
It's the self-doubt. I was fortunate early on in the 90s. I had a friend who I grew up with, who I went to college with as well, who went to summer camp with a lady who ended up becoming Tony Stewart's business manager. And in late 96, she approached me and said, hey, I hear you're doing web stuff. Can you help me? Because Tony needs a website. At that time, he was leaving the IRL and going into the NASCAR. While I grew up close to Michigan International Speedway, we never were racers. So it was not my thing. I wasn't into it. But I was like, sure, I can do this. And jumped in, ended up working with Tony. Tony then introduced me to Joe Gibbs. From there, I was running both their sites, doing their e-commerce, and found myself traveling the country, going to about 25 races a year, meeting with sponsors and kind of representing like different things that Tony was doing on his website. So it gave me like validity to say, hey, this 25-year-old kid now, 24-year-old kid, he has a seat at the table, the proverbial table, when talking about marketing and things that need to happen. I was fortunate to be on Tony's very first double duty, where I flew with the Home Depot execs down. So that is like a remarkable experience, just to remember that and to be able to witness firsthand the logistics that went into planning that. So it was just a really cool opportunity for me to say, hey, this thing actually has some legs. I think it's going to work. And then, a few years later, my legs were chopped out from under me, and I had to figure out, like, okay, now I'm back in Indiana. What am I going to do? Like, I need to rebuild the business again, because you leave NASCAR at some point. I mean, I was never bound to stay in that the whole time. But I think, learning that, then started rebuilding again in Indiana. Was fortunate again. IU Health was one of my very first clients in the state. And in 2001, they took a chance on us, and we started doing some work with Methodist Health Foundation, which then, it's now been, I think we're going on 24 years of our relationship in some form or facet. So lots of good ups and downs throughout my career. This podcast would become, a long time if I went through all of my my trials and challenges and triumphs too.
Yeah, well, you talk about relationships, and certainly, I'm a big believer that business is about relationships, no matter what the business is. Talk about that in your line of work and how important. You mentioned the Methodist Health Foundation. You mentioned the Tony Stewart deal. Those were all about, and I'm sure as you grew your business, all about relationships.
Yes. It's the biggest thing you have. I mean, I think I was always taught, your reputation is your number one thing. And I'll say this, not everyone loves me, but I hope at the end of the day that they can respect me. Not saying that they can, but I've always done my best to live up to what I say. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. If there's some reason that something gets in the way, I'm going to explain why. But I don't feel you need to lie, cheat, or steal your way into anything. And I think that shines through. I've had past clients that maybe we didn't part on the best of terms from a business side, but we're still friends, and we still, can see each other. A lot of my clients have become my friends over the years and still are, even when they're no longer clients. Some have turned into where that, they'll reach out if they're looking for a new gig sometimes, and I may have a network. So it's all relationship driven. I think you have to do that. But what people, I think, don't realize is that you just have to be true to your word. And I think you have to be a good person, and it should always be a win-win. You don't have to feel like you need to screw over the other side to get ahead. But a lot of people in business, I think they fail to understand that simple concept.
Well, fast forward to today. Give us the thumbnail description. As I mentioned, TrendyMinds is the largest full-service marketing agency in Indianapolis. You've built a great company, expanded down to Florida. Give us the thumbnail description of TrendyMinds.
Sure. So we are the agency of preference. Our clients aren't told to work with us. They're not an agency of record where usually the C-suite says you must work with this group. The business decides that they want to work with us, and they've stayed with us. Most of our clients, especially the large enterprise, have been with us at least 10 years or longer, and that includes Salesforce and Cummins and Lilly. And then from Lilly, from all those, kind of spread out into our Roche business and our Bavarian Nordic business and our Coupa and Workday and all those others. So again, all around relationships. The agency is the largest in the city, if not the state. And recently we've transitioned. Stacy Summer is our CEO, and Catherine Stiver is our Chief Growth Officer. And it was very intentional that we wanted to make sure our management team was in place. They've actually been running the company for at least the last year. I've been still in that, even though I was in that CEO role, I was out of the day-to-day on purpose. And that's intentional. What I've found is that a lot of founders have a hard time leaving. Again, you're going to face that at some point, Gary, just like every founder does. And what do you do? What's your, it's not about your legacy either. It's about how does the entity live on without you? And I wanted to be able to be in the control of doing that. That's why we did it now, even though I'm still the majority owner of TrendyMinds. I wanted to set up our management team to be successful so that eventually when I do ride off into that sunset or put out to pasture, I'll be able to look back and say that company is thriving and doing very well.
Yeah. Talk about your expansion. I think it's probably been a couple of years now. Sometimes I lose track of times, but that you ventured down into Florida. Tell us what that's all about.
Yeah. So Florida was part of it, and more of a hiring. We started looking at diversifying our team and where they were. And it wasn't that anything was bad with Indiana. We still have a large presence in Indiana. I just know that I was gaining a lot by being outside and by moving around. And I know the diversity of thought was really big. So we looked at other areas that we could expand and also build our network that's stronger. Along the same lines, we did acquisitions. So even as back into 2013, we purchased Tactic Marketing from Phil Daniels. That was our first. And then we purchased StatWax from Kelly and the Blast people. And then now, just as of last year, bought Factory, which is an agency out of Salt Lake City. We're still acquisitive, so we're still looking at acquiring others that are building into our agency of preference model. And with that comes other people in other states. We've been remote since 2012. We were one of the first adopters of Slack really early on. And for us, the pandemic didn't hold us back. It actually fueled us. So now we operate in, I think it's around 22 to 23 states and growing.
Yeah, talk about that. I was going to ask you about that in terms of the remote model, which now is fairly commonplace, spurred on, of course, by the pandemic. But you started that, as you said, years ago, more than a decade ago. And I assume it's been a good model for you.
It has. We were hybrid for quite some time. So we had remote team members and we had in office because we have brick and mortar. So we still have our office in Indianapolis. What we found is, I think we're in a unique industry. We're not a widget builder. We're also not one where you don't know where your team is. Like, we use a software called Roam that is our office of today, where we can log in. Right now, I can look and see who's in their office or who's meeting with each other. And it's not to be Big Brother. It's actually more of a community feel. So you feel like, oh, I can see that so-and-so over there is available. I needed to talk with her. Like, I'm going to go see if she's available, to chat with me now. Those types of tools make us feel more connected. Mm-hmm. We're also fortunate in that our work is, we have massive production systems. We time track, we do all that. So we know, and the team is really good at self-regulated. I do believe that there can be characters out there that aren't as honest. But I think for us, we've really worked hard to have that culture that, hey, you're here as a team, you help each other. And if someone's dragging you down, then maybe they're not the right fit. So we've been fortunate that the team self-regulates. So for me, remote is great. I don't see a need to ever go back into a full office. For one, it'd be impossible. I mean, we would have to end a lot of roles and then bring everybody to one central location to do that. So I don't see that being something for us. And I think it can be successful. You just have to be able to understand and be flexible to make it work.
Yeah. Change in the workplace, change in the marketing industry. How would you kind of describe how the industry has changed specific to Indianapolis since you founded the company now almost 30 years ago?
Yeah, well, technology is huge. Technology has helped. I mean, High Alpha wouldn't be here today if it were not for Exact Target, if it were not for technology. I mean, that's just one example. That ecosystem has been so big. For us at TrendyMinds, we have been really early adapters of technology. I love tech. If it can help me do more things quicker and more efficiently, I'm going to embrace it. That culture is still in our DNA of our team. I'm pushing them even as chairman. I'm like, so what are we doing from AI? How is this working?
Yeah.
This isn't anything new for us. We've been looking and using different components of AI for at least 3-4 years, if not longer, in some of our software. I like to take people back to when I started in the 90s. And when I came out of college, a lot of my peers that went through the art program or graphic design program, they learned all the the foundational work and how to do the work by hand. Around that same time, Adobe was starting. So Adobe Illustrator 1.0 started. Everyone was like, oh, what's going to happen to graphic designers? They're going to be not needed. Well, that's not the case. It was a new tool. And now they can be more efficient. So I think with AI coming in, we have to embrace it as marketers, say, how can we do things? If we were doing a lot of certain type of work, whether it was, let's say, writing headlines for social media. Well, yes, you could have a person that does that and they spend 6 hours doing that. Well, that's a lot of money and time. Instead, we could have AI take the first pass at it. And it's not that it can stand alone. It needs a human interaction. I think as it evolves and gets better, we're going to see less and less. But I think that we will evolve as marketers too, to say, okay, we were spending a lot of time here. Doesn't mean we're obsolete. We just could go someplace else. I mean, media is a great example. Doesn't mean media is obsolete. We still need media. There's just different ways of doing it today than what there was, 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah. In terms of Indianapolis as a hub, if you will, or center for creative talent, I think for a number of years, and I would hear this complaint sometimes in the marketing community that there was a tendency for companies to go to New York or Chicago or other places for creative work. I think there's plenty of great talent, you obviously included. What's your take on that and the brand of Indianapolis as a creative hub?
So we always bristled at the thought that you had to go to the coast to get really great creative. In fact, we've underpinned several AORs, the big conglomerates. So we've worked with them. Yes, there are some brilliant people that work there, and yes, they create some brilliant work. However, at a brilliant cost. Yeah. And I think in today's day, you don't need all of the glitz and glamour all the time. You do need it sometimes, but you don't need it all the time. But you still need great creative and great quality. We like to call ourselves Midwestern nice, and we see that when we work with other entities, whether they're a production company, crews in other states, or just other clients. I think that there's a ton of talent in Indy, and not just in Indy, but also in a lot of towns that are similar to Indy. Our thesis is not going out and buying a lot of agencies that are in major cities. It's that smaller city that has a lot of great people, great work ethic, very talented, lots of creativity. And Indy is just that. With Indy all along, I've always said, I think, and I've said this for years, having been somewhat of an outsider, because I grew up in Michigan, I went to Anderson. So while I've lived in Indy for almost 30 years, it's still, I'm not a Hoosier through and through, even though I've lived at the longest of any place else. But I've always said, I felt like Indy has a little bit of a self-complex, because I think for years we grew up comparing ourselves to Chicago or Detroit or New York. I'm like, stop doing that. We will never be that. Yeah. But what we should lean into is what we do have that's really good. And we've got some great people, some great creative. And I think it's okay to say, hey, we are the creative hub. Look at all that we have. I tell people all the time, I'm involved in some investment groups too. And I'm like, if you're looking at some really good tech scene, like Indy has a phenomenal scene, lots of opportunity there. Even in Florida, Florida operates as one state, which is different. You think that they compete, but they don't. Miami is our friend, just like Tampa, Sarasota, wherever. But they're like, Florida's more of that complex of, we're vacation retirement state, but now we want to be a business state. So the infrastructure isn't really here for that tech sector. There's some, but nowhere near what we have in Indy with the tech side, and including even the corporate headquarters. We're very, very fortunate to have that. A lot, as I've been out and I've been looking at M&A targets and even as doing acquisitions, whether they're in Texas or other places, I'm amazed at what Indy has that we don't even realize it because we're from there. And the fact, like I was talking with someone this morning, the fact that Lily has worked with us or others have worked with us for, 14, 15 years, that doesn't just happen if we were from a small town, in Idaho or someplace else. Like, the proximity is important, and it's important that you have that ability to grow a great business, and Indy offers that. So for me, I think they should they should lean heavier into those and less about like comparing us to the bigs.
Yeah. I know a few years ago, I think when you were kind of marking your 25th anniversary, you put together a list of kind of lessons learned over those first 25 years in business, people, teams, those types of things. I wanted to run through, can't go through all of them, but wanted to get your take maybe on a couple of highlights. So you said in terms of business, you said one of the points, don't fight for the dollar and don't make money your focus.
Yes. I love that you brought that up. I just spoke with someone this morning and I said those same lines. And I didn't even know you were going to do this. This is amazing. Yeah, I seriously just had a call with someone that was M&A chats. I've never fought over that. And I said, I've watched a lot of people in my career, whether it was when I was starting and there were others that I thought were big. Like I remember there was a guy that had an agency that was doing $500,000 a year. And I thought that was huge. I mean, I was like, wow, how could I ever get to that point?
Yeah.
But then I watched him work and he was kind of slimy. I would see what he did. And then, I would notice that like money was the driver. And then it wasn't just him, it was other people. And I find that when you focus on the dollar never comes. But when you don't focus on the dollar, funny enough, dollars come to you. So that's always been a big thing. Also, I've always wanted to have a long relationship with my clients, not just a one-hit wonder and have one project. If there was a problem, I want us to fix it. I don't want us to fight over the money because I know that the value of that relationship is so much greater long-term than just one project or 1 year.
Yeah. In terms of people, you had several points there too, including one that says, realize not everyone will want you to succeed.
Yes. I've said before, there's always going to be haters out there.
Yeah.
I think we see it even more now in the world of social media. I mean,
right.
Whenever you post something, you just, I've been fortunate to be featured in a lot of different media over my years, and I've always been told, and I counsel other people, don't read the comments. Sometimes the comments can crack you up. You just have to be thick-skinned and just take it for what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are people that, especially if people feel wronged, I think that's a lot of it. And at times, like, it's too bad because this is a miscommunication. You could say something, but it's not how you say it or what your intention, it's how they receive it. So there will be people that I think, you do have your core that want you to succeed, but there's always those that maybe not. And you have to be able to suss them out, especially in the corporate world, because a lot of people are climbing the proverbial corporate ladder. And when they're doing that, you want to make sure you understand their interests and where they're going, because they will throw you under the bus whenever they can, whereas others will guard you fiercely and will have your back no matter what happens. So it's just finding the right people.
Yeah. On teams, you can't do it alone. Focus on we, not me. And I think especially for entrepreneurs, there's a tendency to want to do everything, to want to really be the guy or the gal that does it all. But you feel you learn lessons that's really not the smart thing to do.
100%. I think there has to be a final say at some point, but you don't have to have it in every single decision. I think there's a lot that can happen. We are a big culture at TrendyMinds of we, not me. And it's not just in the I did this, I did that, or whatever, but it's also in the, well, that's not my job. It's like, well, no, like we're all one. Like Tyler and I have been out like sweeping our parking lot, picking up trash. I mean, doing whatever. It's like, yeah, I'm the CEO and he was the CEO, but we're taking care of things. It needs to be done. We do it. So no one is can have that higher than thou mentality. It's also important to know that it takes so many different talents, and not everybody has the same talent. Some people could be very great at ideating and coming up with ideas. Others are horrible at that, but they're really good at synthesizing all those ideas, because you can have someone that cranks out 30 ideas and only 2 of them are viable. Well, you need somebody to help figure out which 2 are viable. So that teamwork is super important. And a lot of times people don't get it. I think you all can rise. There will always be shining times. Like we have a channel. We use 15.5 as part of our software at TrendyMinds, and we have a channel of kudos. And every week, people have to fill out their report, and they give high fives, they're called. And there's no monetary thing with it. There's nothing that you get. Like if you give so many, you get something. We don't ever do anything like that. But it's so cool to read the high fives from people. So it like just saying thanks for help, with what you did this week, or hey, this person really did an awesome job. So we keep that we mentality and really bristle from anyone who wants to be I.
Final one here, and that's on success. You have never arrived. Owning a business is a constant journey.
Yep. Gary, if you back up this podcast, I actually said these words too. It's like I said, I feel like I've never arrived.
Yeah.
And by that I'm saying I'm always learning something new. The last 4 years for me have been remarkable because I've learned this new world called M&A and finance that I never knew before. And it's been so fun to jump into that. And I'm anxious to see not just how I evolve, but also as TrendyMinds evolves and what we continue to learn. But I think the minute someone feels that they've arrived, that they're the end all be all, look out, because get away, because I got a feeling they're going to come crashing down. So for me, it's always having that. You can be proud of your accomplishments, and that's a difference than being just a total arrogant jerk. And I think you have to have that balance that's there.
Much more headed with Trevor Yager, the chairman and founder of TrendyMinds. When we return, we'll talk about his path and what's next when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
At PNC Bank, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of our customers and communities by helping them move forward financially. As a Main Street bank, we try to do right by our customers with every encounter. Our local teams offer personalized financial advice to help guide you in making the best decision. We're proud to be part of your community. PNC Bank. See how we can make a difference for you at pnc.com. Copyright 2022, the PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved.
And welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is Trevor Yager, the chairman and the founder of TrendyMinds, the largest full-service marketing agency in Indianapolis, a company that continues on the grow. And Trevor, you mentioned this earlier. So you grew up, you've been in Indiana for a long time, but you grew up in Michigan in a tiny town. What was growing up in Michigan like?
Yes, yeah, I grew up in Pittsford, Michigan, which is in Hillsdale County. So it's South Central. We were about 17 miles from Indiana, 13 from Ohio. And it was very different. I mean, most of there was no restaurant in our town. I think there was a blinker light. And to give you perspective, the big town for us was Toledo, Ohio, and that was about an hour away. And Fort Wayne was about an hour and 15. But it was different. I mean, people were judged by their work ethic. Someone wasn't necessarily touted for their accomplishments if they went to school or other things, but if they were hard workers, they were good people.
Yeah.
So we were in church whenever the church doors were open, which the church happened to be right behind my house. So it was, very much the Midwestern, heart of America, so to speak.
Yeah. Is that the work ethic piece really rub off on you? Something that you really have carried with you all these years?
100%. I see it even in my cousins and my siblings as well. I mean, I've been fortunate that I've had good opportunities and I've taken those and I've been able to move those. But yeah, it's not by being lazy. There's a podcast I listen to with a guy who says, like, we talk to people, they say, well, I don't want to, I want to have a really good work-life balance. And he's like, oh, then you must not want to be successful. And it's interesting. His name's Chuck Gallo. And I find it funny because I'm like, that even saying that, people are like, what? It's horrible. How would you say that? Like, well, it's competitive out there.
Yeah.
No one's just sitting around saying, hey, I'm going to write you big checks just because you're you and I like you. So It's like you have to now you have to find that way. I always say you have to integrate. You have to figure out what is right for you. But there's never been a time where I'm able to check out at 5 or check in at 8. I mean, now there are days, of course, but it just depends. But I also believe that if you love what you do, it doesn't matter. I'm at the point now where, yes, I could retire. Yes, I could say like, oh, great run. See y'all later. But that would just leave me feeling just so bored. And
sure.
I think I like to be able to do things. So yeah, work ethic's a big thing for me.
You went to Anderson University. How did Anderson come into play when it came time to choose a college?
So I went to a private Christian school in Adrian, Michigan, called Lenawee Christian. It was built by the Marilat family, and if you know anything about Marilat cabinets, they were the largest cabinet manufacturer. Orville Marilat started it. Amazing story. has a seventh grade education, went to World War II, sent checks home to his wife, saved it, came back to Adrian, started this and built this massive thing. He ended up building our school that was a $50 million complex in 1987.
Wow.
Paid for 2/3 of the tuition for every student. That opened my eyes to other things that were out there. Great program in theater and music and others. And I ended up going to Anderson on a vocal performance scholarship. I went there and I had the same coach as someone that some of the people in Indiana know named Sandy Patty.
Oh my
Her name is
gosh.
Greta
Yeah.
Dominic.
Wow.
I was chosen that and got in the program. So I thought, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a musician. I'm going to sing. And got in the program and realized I hated it because it was all classic. And I'm like, I just don't want to sing classic. And this is before John McLaughlin. When I remember I knew his mom, and I remember him as a little kid. And I think by the time he went through AU, they then had the record label there, and they were able to produce different things. So that's what got me to Anderson. I think from there I switched after the first semester my majors, and I think I switched majors 6 times, going from as far to pre-law to the psychology to whatever. No business though, which is funny.
Now, do you sing to this day? Do you?
I don't anymore. I'm in the car, in the shower, yeah, but no. Or if you get enough liquor in me and there's a karaoke machine around.
Right.
But,
I hear you. That is outstanding. Hey, Trevor, as you reflect back on your career, and certainly I'm sure you get a number of requests for this, but young aspiring entrepreneurs, young people who are looking to start their careers, are there a couple of nuggets of advice you give to young people starting out and kind of feeling their way along their what will be their careers?
Yeah, and I do. It's funny. I take the approach of with anything, it's relationship based. So anyone that approaches me, I don't do every coffee. I don't do every lunch. I don't do every meeting. I think I'm very instinctual. So for me, if someone reaches out or if I learn a little bit, I just don't have a right feeling, I won't take those meetings. But for others, I do. And there's even a couple that I meet with here in Florida, super, super smart. One guy in particular, just has a marketing and has a product company. I wish I was him in my 20s, because I'm like, wow, you're so far ahead. You're already speaking EBITDA. You understand investors. You understand all this stuff. I didn't know any of that. I had to learn along the way. But my advice to him is, a few things. One, if someone comes to you saying that they've got a really good opportunity for you, if you help them do this one thing, run fast, because they probably don't. Or if they come to you saying how much they can help you, but then they're asking you for something first, they're probably not going to.
Yeah.
So I also tell people to trust your instincts. I had someone tell me early on that I wouldn't be successful because I think with my instincts too much and not with the numbers in the business. I can't compare balance sheets with them, but I would like to because I think my way kind of worked out okay. But I tell people you have to trust your gut. You know yourself better, and yes, you may not make every decision 100%, but you got to trust what you believe and don't go against what you believe. The minute you do that, it's a slippery slope, and you're going to end up not being successful, and quite honestly, you could end up in jail or other things that are not good.
Yeah. What's your take on Indianapolis, but more broadly Indiana? Certainly every city, every state is facing a challenge with talent, keeping talent, but really attracting talent. And for Indiana to grow as it can grow and has the opportunity to grow, we got to bring people in. We've got to have people locate here. How would you assess where Indianapolis in particular, is in terms of that talent attraction piece? There's a lot of effort and a lot of money being put into quality of life and all those types of things to make this a place where young people want to go and want to be. Where are we in that game?
So by not living in Indiana now, I feel like I'm getting a really neat perspective. And by living in Florida, and not just, I'm not beach lifing it either. I mean, I'm living, I've got a business community around me here too. And then having business partners in San Antonio, I'm seeing some differences from there. I was just in Indy this year, and I happened to be in town for the State of the City. So I actually, after I sidebarred with Taylor, and I was like, hey, here's what I think you all should do. And it goes to earlier we said, I feel like Indy feels like we need to have campaigns. And you may find that kind of a weird statement coming from a marketing guy to say stop with the campaigns.
Right.
But Gary, you've lived here too.
Yeah.
How many campaigns do we need? Like, it's like we keep doing them and it's like we're not getting the results. I think there's a few things that we have to really focus on and we have to highlight. And it's not saying like, do we have mountains? Do we have oceans? No. Do we have beautiful weather year round? No. Yeah. That's okay. Are we a great place to start and grow a business? Heck yeah. Mm-hmm. Do we have opportunities to connect with corporate? Heck yeah. Mm-hmm. Others don't have those things. Do we have amazing universities that are feeding? Yes. There's a lot of opportunities. There's great sports. Travel's big. I think we've got a great airport. Mm-hmm. Now we need to work on getting better destinations. Yeah. It's like, it's one thing to have that, but like, let's have access. Travel's not a bad thing. Travel's not bad to have people jettison out to do things because what they do is they learn. I've been fortunate that I started traveling when I was 15, and I'm now a big believer in especially international travel, and I encourage our team to do that a lot. I feel like you learn things that you would never have known if you not gotten out of your own little area. Mm-hmm. So if Indiana can lean into more of that, I think that they'll be great. Cost of living is big. I mean, I have friends that went off to live in London and other places. They're my age, they're in marketing. And for a while I was feeling like, why am I in Indiana? Especially back in the 90s and early 2000s, mm-hmm. It wasn't as fun as it is now. And I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of missing out, I feel like. But I'm now on the flip side of that, able to do a lot more than what they can. And then and I wouldn't have been able to do that had I left. But Indiana afforded me those opportunities to build a business, to build a life, to actually build some wealth along the way. Because keep in mind, I came from nothing. Like there's no backing. I started my company with my own credit cards. So, I mean, it's been a brutal, path and the opportunities from clients and from team to come along to help us, that's been huge. So I think for Indiana, really leaning into those things that they're really truly good at, and just let others fight over the noise of what's there.
Yeah. Final question for you, Trevor. What's next? You have a lot going on. Obviously, continue to grow. A new management team in there. Where do you see TrendyMinds in the next 5 to 10 years?
I see TrendyMinds getting even larger. My focus as chairman is going to be focusing on M&A and also our strategic vision, which we have and we're executing against. Stacy Summer and Catherine Stiver and the management team and others are really focused on the day-to-day and making sure that they execute that strategy. We're not giving them the plan saying, oh, here are the steps 1 through 3 follow and you'll be able to check that box. We need them to be strategic thinkers, and they are. And they're running the business and making sure that we are poised for success in the future. So I'm excited to see where it goes. I mean, I think we'll have more acquisitions. I think at some point we'll become acquired. And I think that'll be the next chapter. If we play our cards right and we're set up right, I think it'll be a pretty cool story for Indiana as well. And I think a lot of people will enjoy and have a very good life out of it. So I'm excited for that. I'm not, as I said before, this is not me selling. I haven't sold. I'm just kind of taking myself into a new role and providing a little bit of guardrails, but faith in the management team that they will continue the legacy of TrendyMinds and be able to build and help the clients succeed in the team. So I'm excited to be able to kind of be the grandpa, so to speak, of the company, but not have to be in the day-to-day.
Well, Trevor, it's been great catching up with you. Congratulations on your continued success, and thank you as well for your leadership here in Indiana on multiple fronts over the years. And I look forward to catching up with you the next time you're in town or soon after that, or maybe down in Florida one of these days as well.
Would love to. Let me know when you're down here. We're not too far apart when you're here, so I'd love to catch up. Okay.
Great stuff. Trevor Yager, the founder and the chairman of TrendyMinds, my guest this week on the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. We're a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of our episodes and also get Indiana business news 24/7. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.